Hi, I'm Melody Waintal. I'm here with Barbara Frausto, who's going to be teaching me how to make
Mexican rice. What we have in front of me is oil. This is the heart healthy oil. And we have, of course, long grain Mahatma rice. For me, this is what works. This is perfect. And then we have veggie broth, chicken broth. If you want to make a vegan rice, which I make for my daughter, or if you want to make with chicken broth for the carnivores. Tomato sauce and some seasonings.
What's the first step?
So we put about 3 tablespoons of oil onto the pan that's already starting to heat, a very low heat. Right here, I already have measured 2 cups of rice. Pour that all in, and we want to start browning it. Okay, what I mean by browning it is we let it soak up the oil and it starts turning white. So we start whitening it. You kind of start hearing the sizzle a little bit, and that's when you want to start stirring. We don't want to put the heat on high because we want it to brown evenly. And if you put it on too high, some parts will start burning right away. This is the part that takes patience and the longest. That, I want to say, it takes about approximately 10 minutes. That's kind of like the secret for the rice to all come out just the same.
I know in Spanish it's called sofrito, like frying the rice. When do you know it's ready?
So we know it's ready when most of the rice is whitish and most of the oil is absorbed. You know, you don't want it sticky, you don't want it kind of like what you do with steamed rice. Steamed rice, you know, you just pour it in, pour the water and leave it. This, yeah, you want to let the oil absorb throughout.
So while we wait for the rice to fry a little, how'd you learn this recipe?
Since I was a little kid, I would watch my grandmother cook and my mother cook, mostly my grandmother. And just by watching, just by observing, and just by having her like say, hey, come and stand here and stir this while she was making other things. So I'm like 5 years old and I'm in front of a stove stirring. The last, 50 years I've been making the same rice. Although I always used to make it only one certain way, the way my grandma made it, the way my mom made it. Then throughout the years, I started making it my own. Like now, I make it a veggie or vegan.
And tell me a little bit about growing up in Yucatan.
I was born in Mexico, but we grew up here. I came here, I was about 5 years old. We got here to California so we can start school here. My mom just moved us here. We might as well have been in Mexico. We can only speak Spanish, and everything we did was just like living over there, kind of, sort of. But we would still go back to Mexico for the summers. We would stay for 3 months in the summer with my grandma. I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and I had to take on that role. When my grandma and my mom were working, I had to start the cooking. Okay. Well, I gotta keep an eye on this. Most of it has turned white already, and when I see that some of the grains are already starting to brown a tinge, just a tinge, okay, that's when I know it's ready. As I'm stirring it, I want to put the liquid. So in this case, I'm going to use the veggie broth.
What decision brought you to switch from chicken broth to vegetable broth?
My vegan daughter, because she always loved my rice, and so I wanted to find the right recipe to make it, so she can still eat my rice. And now I just make it like that for the whole family, and everybody loves it. For every cup of rice, it's 2 cups of liquid. So we put 2 cups of rice, and this just happens to be 4 cups of liquid. So we're pouring the whole thing in. And what I love about this is that the veggie broth, it has all the flavorings of the veggies, and it has, some salt and a little bit of spices. And so I don't have to put too much of anything else. So now that we put the liquid, we bring it up to a high boil. And that's when I start adding everything else. Every single grain down on the pan. Let that start to boil. For the 2 cups of rice, I'm going to put 1 whole cup of the tomato sauce. Stir that in.
So your grandmother used to make you make the rice when you had to cook?
Yes. make the rice, we had to sit down and separate the beans because we would have a whole bag of beans, but you still have to separate them because they still have, you have to clean them. It was called cleaning them. So there were little bits of stones in them or even a little bit of dirt. So we'd have to separate the beans and then we'd make those. So I can make beans too. So we separate them and soak them, and yes. So all of us had our little, we had to sit down and make stuff. My task, yes. And one of them was to make the rice. That was just a staple in the house. Make enough rice for like a couple of days. Since there were about 7 of us in the household, because there were 5 kids because my cousins lived with us. So there were 3 girls and my 2 cousins, my grandma, my mom, and my aunt. So there was 8 of us. So it's starting to boil. You can add fresh garlic, you can add fresh onions, which was what I used to do. Now things have come so easy. And since this has spices already, the veggie broth, I still add a little bit of onion salt and a little bit of sea salt. And that would be probably like a teaspoonful. But I'm gonna add the onion salt, and this has a little bit of parsley in it already. If you can smell that, it smells so good.
If only cameras also had a sense of scent.
Right, that's next.
Do you have to constantly be stirring?
Only when you're stirring in the ingredients. So I'm adding some salt, and now we're gonna cover that, and it's in a high boil, and then we turn it all the way down. I grew up making it on a regular gas stove, so I always had the flames, and but then I had to get used to cooking with an electric stove. And
What was the big difference? My grandma used to also have gas and then the electric one. And how was that transition like? Did you burn a lot of food in the meantime? Because I know it like heats up faster, right?
Yes, it's just a different way of just getting used to the cooking, because with the gas stove, it has the flame, so you can turn it off right away and it's fine. This stays hot. I mean, you turn it off and it's still hot, so you have to move the pans out of the way, or else, yes, you will burn it. So I burned not too many, just a couple of things. And this is when I first got married, and then we moved into an apartment that had an electric stove, and the transition, and you just get married, right? What I do is I let it boil for another 5 minutes, like this in the low flame, and then I completely turn it off, but I keep it covered. 15 minutes later, everything's absorbed.
Cool. So it's been like what, 15, 20 minutes?
Come on over. Let's look at the rice, shall we? And pick it up, and voila. So it's completely absorbed, no excess water. You can tell just by, how fluffy it is when we move it around. It doesn't stick. Ready to be served.
Wow. And I see you have some chiles there on that plate?
Yes, always. Okay, some serranos. Makes it look pretty. And after, you grab some and you just eat it with your food.
And what's the trick so it doesn't stick to the bottom?
Yeah, like I said, after like 10 minutes of low heat, you completely turn it off. It's already so hot that it's just gonna absorb on its own, so you don't need any more of the heat on. That just makes it absorb and it won't stick. It should not stick, but if you leave the heat on until it completely absorbs, it will stick. Look at this beautiful fluffy rice, and then you just serve it with your beans and your main dish and some salsas, and here you go. Spanish Mexican rice.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Now we know the secret to the Mexican Spanish rice.
It just tends to make you feel better about life.